Wow. Man, did the Minnesota Vikings get their asses kicked on Monday night. This was not a close game by any stretch, as the Eagles handled them right from the start. The game started with an 11-play, 87-yard drive that took nearly 6 minutes off the clock, and then the Eagles' defense held the Vikings' offense to a 3-and-out, and it only got worse from there. The Eagles were the dominant team. They more than held star receiver Justin Jefferson in check and came out with a well-earned Week 2 win. And despite getting their rear ends more than handed to them in Week 2, it is by no means the end of the season for the Minnesota Vikings. In fact, it's far from it. And there is a lot to take away, both good and bad, from Monday night. And in today's video, we are going to be breaking everything down, the good, bad, and ugly for the Vikings. And without further ado, let's begin. We are going to be diving into the ugly part of the video first. When quarterback Kirk Cousins was blitzed on Monday night against the Eagles, he was just 4 of 12 for 22 yards with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. The touchdown came on a pass to Irv Smith Jr. on a rollout, and it was a good play all around, one of few for the Vikings on Monday night. Aside from that, it was very rough, and that's an understatement to how Kirk and the rest of the offense played. Kirk averaged just 1.8 yards per attempt when blitzed in Week 2, and this is a huge credit to Eagles defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon. The Vikings had no answer for the blitz, and there were times Kirk very much played like a deer in headlights. This is contrary to Week 1 when Kirk was blitzed. He completed 5 of 7 passes against the Packers for 44 yards and a touchdown. Sure, he may not have lit it up when blitzed against Green Bay, but the biggest thing to remember was he did not turn the ball over. That was against the Packers, not the Eagles, to be clear. Every bad stereotype there is with Kirk Cousins was on full display on Monday night, from he can't win big games, to he can't perform in prime time, to he folds under pressure when it matters most. And the worst thing about it as a Vikings fan was you couldn't even fight how bad he was playing. And the ugly part of the video does not solely rely on Kirk Cousins. There were countless drops on Monday, of course the most noteworthy being the Irv Smith drop that ultimately cost the Vikings a touchdown, and ultimately what you could argue in some ways sealed the game. The most important thing to remember here about the ugly part is it's Week 2 and there are plenty of things that can be fixed. The Eagles on top of it played one of the best defensive games they will play all year, as if they played this way every week, they would be in the all-time defense discussion. From the men in the trenches to the secondary, especially Darius Slay, to defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon, the Eagles played their tails off. The Minnesota Vikings' defensive game plan was also not great, as quarterback Jalen Hurts had plenty of time in the pocket to sit back and effectively pick the defense apart, and he did that time and time again. Jalen finished the game an insanely impressive 17 of 18 when throwing passes in the 0 yards to 9 yards of depth from the line of scrimmage, and the only pass that was not completed was the interception he threw to Jordan Hicks, which was batted directly into Hicks' arms. So if you take a fluke or a very just abnormal play away, Jalen was near perfect on the night. And this part of the ugly falls on the defensive coordinator Ed Donatel. There were little to no adjustments. The Eagles, in a lot of ways, took the foot off the gas in the second half, and this game, despite finishing with a score of 24-7, was the most lopsided 17-point victory I've ever seen. This game had all the feeling of a 38-7 beatdown, yes, pun intended, and the Eagles could have very easily scored more than they did. There were no points scored in the second half from either team, despite the Vikings being in position to score plenty of times. There was plenty of bad in the Monday night game, and sure, you can lump some of the bad in with the ugly, but there's a few things we are going to focus on within the bad. The first was the first of Darius Slay's 2 interceptions, where Kirk Cousins thought receiver Justin Jefferson was going to undercut the route only for Darius Slay to undercut the pass and take it the other way. The reason for this specific play to be in the bad portion instead of the ugly is because this is something that can very easily be fixed between Justin and Kirk. And a lot of the Vikings' mistakes from Monday can in fact be fixed, but this specifically is a very quick fix. All Kirk has to do is say, "Hey Justin, on this ball please do this," or "My thought process when throwing this ball was that you were going to come down in front rather than keep going," and it's done. Nothing personal, just business. And this interception was also a good play by Darius Slay to read this immediately, step in front, and very much change the momentum of the game. Because at this point, the Vikings were driving down 17 points. It was 24-7, and they were in the Eagles' red zone. And a simple mistake here that, again, was very, very fixable, cost them really at minimum a field goal, because I do think Greg Joseph would have hit a less than 40-yard field goal. But it is a moot point. Another bad part of the game, and believe me, there are several things to choose from here for the Vikings, was the inability to stop the run. Entering the game, I thought Philly would win in similar fashion to the way in which they did win, but not to that level. Meaning, I thought they would run the football effectively and win in the trenches, but not make Kirk Cousins look awful and, for the first time, severely limit Justin Jefferson. But the frustrating part for the Vikings in this game was there were a lot of times when the Eagles would run the football that defenders weren't even making contact with an Eagles ball carrier until they were 3 or 4 yards past the line of scrimmage. That's a big problem because at that point they can fall forward and gain 5 or 6 yards that were in a lot of ways a free 5 or 6 yards. I do think like a lot of the defense from this game can be cleaned up, but the Vikings' run defense is something to watch moving forward. They do not have the best defensive line in all of football, and I do worry about this long term. I also worry that they are playing the Dan Campbell-led Lions in Week 3, who very much like to run the football, who have a great offensive line, and who not only likes, but wants to very much kick the opposing team's ass. This is a bad part of the football team at the moment, and I am eager to see how Ed Donatel and the defense respond against Detroit in Week 3. And next up is the good part of the Minnesota Vikings, and believe it or not, there was some good in the Week 2 loss to the Eagles. As crazy as this sounds, one of the best things to come out of the Week 2 stinker was head coach Kevin O'Connell immediately after the game saying, "This one is on me." He alluded to not running the ball enough as the Vikings only had 11 attempts on the night for 62 yards. And despite that sounding good, as that averages out to 5.6 yards per carry, 17 came on one run from Jalen Reagor on an end-around, and 2 attempts came from Kirk Cousins for 20 of those yards, meaning the Vikings running backs Alexander Mattison and Dalvin Cook combined ran for 8 attempts for 25 yards. The good coming out of this was O'Connell could have very easily deflected the blame, and it wouldn't have been hard to blame anyone else considering the team had 4 trips in the second half inside the Eagles' 30-yard line, and somehow, someway, came away with 0 points on all 4 trips. But the Vikings blocked a kick in the second half, which I don't think occurred at all in 2021, and despite getting their asses kicked for most of the game, the team was still battling deep in the second half when the game was all but over. The energy in the locker room and the work environment is different this year compared to last, and there's no doubt there's going to be adversity in every NFL season. Even for the Buffalo Bills right now, who look like future Super Bowl champions, there is a 99.99 repeating percent chance they do not go 20-0. They will, in fact, lose a game somewhere. How will the team, this is referring to the Vikings now, respond to this? And Cam Dantzler, a third-year corner, looked very good as well and made a few big stops for the defense in a game where not a lot of guys came to play. And I did want to share this as well. The last time the Vikings have won a division title, which was in 2015 and 2017, they started the season off with a win on their home field and a 17-point loss on the road, and they lost by 17 to the Eagles on Monday night. Now, that is a little far-fetched, but I did want to at least mention that. Remember, it is week 2 of a new regime and a new era, but this new regime already beat the Packers, and by double digits at that. Philly is a very, very tough place to play, and starting off the season with 2 playoff teams from last year is never easy. How will the Vikings respond moving forward? Because that's what's going to matter most, and I can't wait to see what Kevin O'Connell and company has up their sleeves. And that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, I now ask you to please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it would mean the world and help tremendously with the YouTube algorithm. Also, please subscribe to the second channel where we rebuild NFL teams. The link is in the description, and until next time, as always, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.